So you're doing everything you're supposed to do. You're eating healthy, you're consistent with your exercise, you feel like you should be losing weight, but it's just not happening. Trust me, you're not alone, but don't worry, today I'm going to show you why this could be happening, the 4 main things research shows most people who are successful do, and what changes you can make to start seeing results. So when I said you're not alone, I really mean it. Most people actually struggle to lose weight, and especially, more importantly, keeping it off. There's a lot of research showing most people who lose it can't keep it off, but there's also been some research I want to touch on today that's, I think, really important because it looked at what they most commonly saw in people who not only lost weight, but were able to maintain their weight as well. The first thing was they ate a low-fat diet. The second, they did frequent monitoring of their weight. The third, they frequently monitored their food intake. And the fourth was they had high levels of regular activity. Now, I want to be crystal clear. I'm not saying you have to go on a low-fat diet. I'm just saying what the research showed. But you know what? I actually kind of get it. Fat does have the lowest thermic effect of food. Thermic effect of food is how many calories your body burns, just kind of processing the food you eat. Now, I'm not saying that higher fat diets can have benefits for some people, especially if you're dealing with something like diabetes. Also, high fat diets oftentimes help you feel full. So if you feel more full, you're more likely to keep your calories down, so it works for you. But the thing is, it's not like this magic solution. Pretty much any research has looked at calories and protein and equated them and did either high fat or high carbs have showed absolutely no difference. And hey, I'm 45 years old. I have seen all the diets from 1979 on, and it's amazing how they just kind of tend to circulate and change completely. Like back in the 80s, it was low fat everything. There wasn't a single product in the world that didn't have a low fat variation because that's what everyone was doing. Then the 90s came along, here came Atkins, and it was all about low carb, which is really ironic because if you actually look at what most people do with a keto diet nowadays, it's pretty much just Atkins because most people eat way too high a protein to actually be in ketosis, but I digress. I remember a graph they did back maybe like 10 years ago or so because everyone was blaming obesity on sugar, but they actually showed sugar consumption had significantly been going up for a long time, and then all of a sudden it started plummeting, but obesity kept going at the same rate up, so dropping sugar consumption actually didn't help with the obesity epidemic. So yeah, we tried to blame sugar, we tried to blame carbs, we tried to blame fat, we tried to blame chemicals, we tried to blame everything, but you know what? Ultimately, it comes down to a lifestyle as a whole, and it's never going to be just one thing. The second thing, frequent monitoring of your weight. And you hear us say all the time, myself included, don't get too attached to the scale. Don't let it define you. You can make progress without the scale and everything. And those are all absolutely true. But when you're monitoring yourself, it keeps you accountable. And what usually ends up happening, you go on a diet for a while, right? You get frustrated, you kind of stop, you decide to stop weighing yourself completely, you kind of turn a blind eye, you kind of want to live in denial and just hope that maybe things aren't going the wrong way. So you stop paying attention, 6 months, a year, 2 years go by, now you're up 20, 30, 40 pounds. Whereas if you keep monitoring your weight, if you see this trend happening, you're much more likely to put a halt on it and get things back together again. So yeah, I do think it's a good idea to monitor your weight. Just don't make it the be all end all. Don't have an emotional connection to that number, but it has been shown to be a key component to losing weight and keeping it off. The third one, frequently monitoring your food. You know, this is a big one. It really is. And I'm going to expand much more on this in a bit, but it should be kind of obvious. If you're monitoring how much you eat, you're much more likely to be able to lose weight and keep it off as well. And if you're not paying attention and you keep going into this on again, off again, all or nothing mentality, well, we both know how that typically ends. And the fourth thing, staying highly active. This is probably the most overlooked thing. It's just so important. It makes such a big difference. And I know we hear all the time, you can't outtrain a bad diet, nutrition is more important, but I don't necessarily agree. I mean, yes, you can't outtrain a bad diet, but that doesn't mean activity isn't extremely important. And there's a lot of research on this. I've talked before about the study that looked at all-cause mortality from increases in steps, and they monitored all the way from like 2,000 up to like 15,000. And there was essentially a 10% decrease in all-cause mortality for every extra 1,000 steps taken. And while everyone loves to just blame getting older on why people get fatter, it's really not that simple. It's not just your metabolism. I mean, research has showed that it doesn't really slow down at all up until the age of 60, at least as long as you regularly strength train and keep your muscle. But even if you don't, we're still talking like a 1 to 2% decline per decade. So it's not just metabolism. What actually happens is we get so much less active as we get older. We have much more responsibility. You're not walking around the school all the time, playing sports. Now you've got to take care of families and you've got jobs where you sit in front of a desk all day, especially nowadays when everything gets delivered home. It's just so easy to be inactive. But anyway, let's just say, hey, I already do all those things, or you know what, I'm staying on my plan and I'm still not seeing results. What can you do to help get things moving again? Well, that's what I really want to cover here. But before you start making changes, the first thing you want to do is make sure you have an appropriate definition of what progress looks like. And if you might actually be losing weight already, and not necessarily even weight, but at least body fat. Remember, weight and fat are not always the same thing. And especially with a good strength training routine, you can not lose weight or even gain weight and see improvements in your body composition. So you want to make sure, yeah, you're weighing yourself, but also looking at things like measurements and pictures. I took a poll a couple years ago, and only 19% of people said they regularly take pictures. And at the end of the day, it's your body you're trying to change, not a number on the scale. So not only don't only focus on the scale, but many times a lack of progress is just mismanaged expectations to begin with. Like I've seen many people say, I'm only losing 1 or 2 pounds a week and it's going so slow and I'm not seeing progress. And I'm like, 1 or 2 pounds is great. I've actually seen people say, I'm so frustrated, I only lost 5 pounds last week. And it's like, what? You shouldn't even be losing that fast. That's probably unsustainable, unhealthy, and it's going to destroy your metabolism. It's just, if you have these expectations of how fast you think things should go, and that's not realistic to begin with, it's going to make you feel like something's not working, even when it is. 1 to 2 pounds is fantastic. I don't care how heavy you are to start. Even a half a pound, that's still progress. It's going in the right direction, and you're not going to lose weight every single week. You're going to have weeks that are the same, down a lot, up some. So you want to make sure you're looking at a big picture, and slow progress adds up to big progress in the long run. But let's just say you really aren't seeing any progress and you're not sure what to do. One of the first things to look at is how much accountability you have. And even just like getting a coach, I've had so many times where I've had a client come to me saying that they were doing X plan, not seeing any progress. They start with me, and I actually have them continue to do the exact same thing they were doing on their own. And now all of a sudden they start seeing progress. Why? Now they have accountability and they're sticking to their plan better. So if you think this is something you could benefit from, you can apply for coaching. I have a link in the description and we can see if we're a good match. But even then, even without that kind of accountability, just being accountable to your diet by yourself goes a long way. Are you tracking your intake? If you're not, how do you know that you're in a calorie deficit? How do you know you're supposed to be in a calorie deficit? You don't even know how much you're eating. So starting there is step one. But even if you are tracking already, we as humans, we're just not very good at accurately accounting for our intake. This has been shown in research. In fact, there was a study once that took obese people who claimed they couldn't lose weight on 1,200 calories. And when they actually got down to how much they were eating, they were literally eating double what they said they were eating. So what I would recommend doing is take a week, actually preferably 2, but at least 1 week. And what you're gonna do here is you're gonna be spot on perfect with your diet. Normally I say perfection is the enemy. It creates an all or nothing mentality. You don't have to be perfect, and this is all true, but you can do anything for 1 or 2 weeks, right? And what this can do is give you a really accurate representation of what things really look like. And it can be really easy to be eyeballing portion sizes and taking little extra bites and tastes and licks and stuff that you're not accounting for. Cheat meals on the weekends that you pretend don't happen. A lot of people like to look at their target calories, but kind of ignore their actual consumed calories. And it's not target calories that get you results. It's what you actually eat, regardless if you track it or not. So you can easily undo an entire week's deficit in 1 or 2 days of cheats and binging and anything else. And I'm not even necessarily saying you're trying to get away with anything. It's just you might be off and not realize it. Take this time to measure everything, prepare all your food at home yourself, don't go out to eat, account for everything. And a lot of times when people do this, all of a sudden they go from not being able to lose weight to boom, just like that, they lose 2 pounds. Do the same thing with your activity. Are you tracking steps? Do you know how active you're being? Are you being consistent with your routine? If you don't know, take the next week and track your steps. See what it looks like. You might be blown away with how low it is. When you actually actively track your steps, it typically by default actually makes you be more active just because you're looking at it and it's holding you accountable. And I love things like activity trackers that can be really helpful. Just know though that they're really inaccurate in terms of how many calories you burn. So don't look at it from that. Research has shown that could be off up to like 85-90% or something like that. Don't look at it for calories burned, but you can look at it for, am I being as active as usual, less active, more active, and get a better idea. Another thing to look at is your protein intake. Research has consistently shown a higher protein diet helps more with fat loss than a lower protein diet. It helps you feel more full. Hunger is one of the biggest reasons people struggle to stay on plan and get results. It can help you build some muscle. And at this point, I almost essentially look at it as free calories. There's crazy research out there to show people overate even on 800 more calories a day through protein and didn't gain any additional body fat. The other thing is you simply might be eating too many calories. Like you might think the amount of calories you are eating should be a deficit, but it's not. Remember, a calorie deficit means you're losing body fat. You can't be in a calorie deficit and maintain your weight. But what you might do is take some sort of TDEE calculator or something like that that told you X amount of calories should be a calorie deficit. You're doing it and it's not responding, but that's because that calculator wasn't specific to you, your genetics, your diet history, and they oftentimes overestimate what your maintenance calories should be. So it might just be you need to reduce your calories some to finally get things moving. But if you do all that and you still can't lose, I'm gonna take a wild guess here, you probably probably have a pretty long, maybe even an extreme history of dieting, a lot of crash dieting, yo-yo dieting, and what you might not understand is that just wrecks your metabolism. Your body has a self-defense mechanism against starvation, and every time you try to starve yourself, it throws up red flags, it alters your hormones, it lowers your metabolic rate, and it tries to defend against fat loss as much as it can. And when you do this over and over and over for years, it gets to the point where it's damn near impossible to lose body fat. So if that is you, don't worry, it doesn't mean you can't lose body fat anymore, but it does mean you're gonna have to take a longer period to help restore your metabolism back to what it should be. You're gonna do this with a process called reverse dieting. What you do is you increase your calories gradually, maybe around 50 to 100 per week, and this way you can get those calories back up and your body adapts to those higher calories again to help speed up your metabolism. Because you're gradually increasing it, it helps minimize fat gain along the way, and it puts you back in a position where you can later come back and now start seeing results again. But if you really just want to lose now, and that sounds horrible, I mean, you might still have to do it, but there's one other thing you can try first. And what you can do is take a 2-week diet break first, bring your calories up around maybe 300 to 500, reduce your cardio in half, and sometimes that helps kind of, for lack of a better term, reset things, put you in a better spot, then you come back and can start seeing results again. And the thing is, so many people are afraid of increasing their calories. I'm in a fat loss phase, I want to lose fat, and they just get petrified at the idea of eating more. But the thing is, your body's just so adaptive. And if you never give it a break, if it always thinks that the calories are getting lower and lower and lower, and you never let it think, hey, I've got some higher calories again, it's just gonna guard and make it harder and harder. This helps your body back off that guarding of fat loss, and never taking these is actually ruining your progress. Honestly, these periods of maintenance is arguably the best fat loss tool. So if you wanna learn more about diet breaks, how to implement them, then make sure you check out this video here, and I'll cover everything you need to know. If you have any questions, put them in the comments, and I'll see you in that other video.